fishtailing prepared. There's a little black box, say
It says preview.
we're live.
It says preview.
Does it, now the little black box says we're live? Now? Starting now? Whoop, I gotta shut this volume off because that'll be a crazy echo. Wow. My volume control doesn't want to come up. This is irritating. Let me get this. Wow. Hang on. Oh, please. I'm clicking the volume button on my device here. And it doesn't want to click.
Should be able to mute it directly on the page.
Okay, good thinking, Jenny. All right, sorry about that tiny little technical glitch and another technical glitch. I'm going to start tonight with just a little bit of show and tell, just because it's cool. I'll just put that there. There's a maple bowl that I turned. My friend Paul comes to the shop at the Christmas season. He comes and spends a day turning with me. And this year, I pulled this piece out of storage. And what's cool about this is that, I just seen if I had another piece there. When I get a log that I want to turn into a bowl, and I'm going to put it away, I wrap it in stretch film, 18-inch wide stretch film. And it's just, you know, like putting leftovers in your freezer. I wrap it and wrap it and wrap it and wrap it and wrap it. So this got put away 3 years ago, this piece of maple. At the time it got put away, it wasn't spalted. Spalting is a fungus. That's the black lines that you can see in there. So this has happened to me a couple different times where if it's the reason I know it wasn't is because if the wood's got a cool characteristic, I write that on the stretch film. So I write the day I stored it, what its moisture content is, and if it's got anything cool like spalting or flame or quilted or whatever. So when I put this away 3 years ago, it didn't have any spalting. And when I took it out, look at that amazing, amazing, amazing piece of wood. So that's just neat. I just wanted to show that to you. I'm really, really happy with how that bowl came out. Dripping wet green the day I turned it. Then the other thing, Ginny, you know where I'm going next. I like having neat decorations in the shop, kind of a talking point if people are in here for classes or whatever. So Ginny and I were at an architectural salvage store a week ago tomorrow, last Friday, and we found this. Isn't that cool? A walk light. So I had it was only the light, and it's just 1.5 inch plumbing pipe from a home center is how I got it mounted to the wall. Had to put a little wiring on it, and then I put a remote on it because, of course, who wants to walk all the way over there to turn that on? So it's just a neat, it's my new favorite thing in the shop. I love that. So anyway, that has nothing to do with woodworking, but here we are. So before I jump in, big thanks to Titebond for sponsoring this, and we're gonna hit it. First question, really love the Q&A. Thank you, very nice. My main problem as a relative newcomer to woodworking is how to tell grain direction. I've lost count of the number of times I've gouged a piece out of a project. Coming from, I'm going to say the name wrong, CLWYD, wide in the UK. Grain direction. So here's a board. This is ash, and here's the way I typically teach this, is think of grain in a board like hairs on a cat. And what we know about cats is that if you pet them in the right direction, their hair lays down, and then they stand there for a while anyway. Cats like to do things on their own terms. And if you pet their if you pet their hair in the wrong direction, it kind of stands up on end and they run away, which is okay with me. No, I like cats. So wood is the same way. We got to pet the hairs in the right direction. When you look at this piece, the grain lines are prevailing up toward that edge, up toward that edge, up toward that edge. So if you think of this like a cat, if I go in this direction, those hairs, those fibers are laying down. And if I come in this direction, they're going to stand up. So symptomatically, when you're jointing the edge of a board or hand planing the edge of a board, if I plane it in this direction, I'm most likely going to get good results. If I plane it in this direction or joint it in this direction, when those stand up on edge, one of the symptoms of that is chipping. So one way to look at this is that if I'm on a jointer and that edge is down, here's what's kind of cool. See the big flame right here, that cathedral? Typically, not all the time, but typically the flames or cathedrals on a board point in the correct travel direction for a jointer or a router table. It's the same rule. If I have this horizontal and there's a bit spinning, I'm going to get the best result if I can cut in this direction rather than this direction. So this is showing me feed that way to lay the cat hairs down. So hopefully the cat hair thing helps you a little bit. Steve says, dos preguntas, 2 questions from Steve in Connecticut. On the December live, showed a table saw sled, narrow part sled maybe. Have you run into a case where the length of cut is longer than your sled? Oh, so it must be the narrow part sled. Yeah, so we will go to the table saw in a little bit to answer that question, because I think I know what you're talking about. 2, I've seen when a table saw is used to cut aluminum T-track, very true. I have thin aluminum strip about 12 inches long. I need to remove about 40 thousandths on the long edge to fit into a matching track. I was either going to secure the aluminum to a board and send it. I think it ended there prematurely. So yeah, I would, if your question is, can you rip that on a table saw? Yeah, the answer is yes. And we'll go to the saw and also talk about blade selection. And I think double face taping it to another board is a good idea because it's probably something pretty small. So let's go, let me do a quick browse to see. Yeah, so let's go there, Ginny, table saw, and then we'll come back to the bench and do more questions here. So Steve's question. First part, small parts ripping. So this sled, if you want to see this in action, go back to the December live a month ago, and I showed this, and his question then was, what about longer pieces? Great question, because if I'm edge banding cabinet parts, I'm not going to be able to cut those on this because that edge banding has to be way, they're coming for you, Jenny. That edge banding is going to be way longer than the sled can handle. So here's what I use for that. Here's the way this works. And companies make these products commercially. I know Rockler sells one. This one has 2 magnets in it. And if you're not familiar yet with these mag switches, you should be. They're amazing. The way it works is that in this position, turned like this, I'm going to go down to the table saw, Jenny. Right now those magnets are turned off, so nothing's happening. When I turn these, I'm turning them on, and that is an amazing amount of bite on the table saw. Now you can just stay where you are. So the way this works is that I'm going to set it up. Why don't you, actually Jenny, I'm going to have you come in closer. Let me move this bench out of the way a little bit.
I can zoom in more.
Well, you need to be straight onto the blade to really see what's going on. But yeah, from there, if you can do a zoom, I'm going to unplug. And we want to be right here. So here's what I'll do. This bolt is so that I have fine adjustment on this end. So I want to set this so that the distance from my left side of the blade to the head of this bolt is the thickness of material I'm trying to produce. So if I want, do you want me to just take the guard off? Would that be more?
Yeah, that would be great. Ow, this thing's heavy.
All right. So I'm going to set this so the distance from the head to the left side of the blade is equal to the thickness of banding I want, but this jig needs to be here. So you can put a straight edge on here, draw a line on the table, measure, but test cuts, whatever it's going to take. So then I can lock this down, and the reason this is like this is so that once it's locked, I can micro adjust this and then use the wing nut. Hang on a second. There. I can micro adjust, then use the wing nut to rigidly lock it in place. Now the way it works is the material you're cutting your edge band from, you bring that to the rip fence on the saw, slide to the left until the material's edge kisses the head of the bolt, and then you move forward. And this offcut is what you're keeping. And of course, I can have the guard on here because it's not interfering with the fence or anything, so I would have the guard in place. So the part we want is coming off the outboard side, it's the offcut. Once I've made that cut, now the board is narrower, I bring it back, I put it on the fence, I again slide the fence over until the freshly cut edge kisses the bolt, make the cut. Repeat, 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 repeat. So logistically, part of the key to this is if you need a lot of edge banding, you want to have a bunch of boards that are the same width. So then once I kiss this bolt for board number 1, I can cut number 2, cut number 3, cut number 4, cut number 5. Then I come back again, move the fence, and I can cut a bunch of boards. Come back again, move the fence, rinse and repeat. So like obviously this is shop made, and like I said, I'm confident, and somebody else can maybe put it in the comments if they have one, that Rockler makes a version of this that I think locks in the miter gauge slot. I don't think it's magnetic, but the concept is the same. Now, aluminum on the table saw. I'm just going to come out here. So this is a Freud blade, obviously, and it is specifically for cutting aluminum. So one way to crack this nut in your world would be to just Google Freud blade for cutting aluminum. Characteristically, look how fine the teeth are. It's an 80 tooth blade. And then if we look this way, or you can just trust me, am I inside your focal length?
Move back a little bit. There we go. That's good.
Okay. It's a triple chip grind. So high tooth count, 80 tooth count, triple chip grind. And then also look at the rake, which is the angle on the teeth, and I believe it's negative. Let me cheat and read it here if it says. Yeah, it doesn't say on here, but I'm pretty darn sure that this is a negative rake. If it's not negative, it's 0. But I think it's negative. I think it's actually leaning back from the cut. So this is specifically a non-ferrous metal cutting blade, and I've cut a boatload of aluminum with this. It does a really great job. Okay. Looking at questions? Evangelist says hello from West Point, like West Point, the military academy. That's kind of cool. Sorry, my little chat roll thing here is being a little funky. What's the best way to clean router bits before sharpening? Router bit cleaner. I often use a product called CMT. Yeah, I couldn't remember if it was CMT 2000 or 2050. CMT 2050. Real benign stuff, but works great. Spray it on, let it sit a couple minutes, and then I use Ginny's toothbrush to scrub them, to get the stuff out. I use an old toothbrush to scrub them. Toothbrush because the bristles are plastic, so you're not rubbing on the carbide with something metal. That works very well. Thomas says, I emailed my question earlier. Perhaps you can answer during the live, but I don't know what that question is. So just repost it, Thomas, because I don't know where I don't know what email that would be. KMY Kimmy something, a frequent question asker, which is great, says, I want to use a router and a set of plywood edging bits so I can cut a profile into a 2 by 4 foot tabletop, then add a hardwood edge with a mating profile. On the table, should I cut the groove using a router table and some sort of support, or put it on the workbench and do it handheld? That's a pretty big, you don't say how thick it is, but still, so I'm thick because that's going to make it heavier, but still at 2 feet by 4 feet, that's a significant chunk of wood. I would lean toward doing the cuts on the table at the bench, handheld, take the tool to the work, so that you're not fighting that. There's just, if you have it on the table, especially when you're doing the 2 foot end and there's 4 foot of stuff sticking off, if that rocks a little bit, it's going to screw up the joint you're cutting. So I think that's a case where it's better to do it handheld. Gary is in South Pasadena and says hello. Hello, Gary. Nurse Boy 99.99. Hi from Manitoba. Hello, Manitoba. The best way to clean wood residue from power rasps. Brushes don't work. It's told to use a torch and burn it out. Won't that damage the rasp? Boy, I don't know. I'm not a power carver kind of a guy. So I'm not sure. Yeah, I'd be hesitant to take a torch to a tool. I think you could gently do that without screwing up like the hardness of it. But I'm with you. I'd be hesitant to do that. I don't know. I don't have a good one for that. Mike from FDL, Wisconsin. What's FDL, Jenny? What do you think that is? FDL. I know Wisconsin pretty well, but I don't know what that is.
Fond du Lac?
Oh, Fond du Lac. Good job. Good shooting, Tex. Way to go. Nice. Yeah. Hello, Mike from Fond du Lac. A guest says, oh, that was Mike. Can you demonstrate how to do an inlay with the router? Yeah, but I'd have to prep for it. Like, for one, I don't have any inlay here. So that's something I would need to work up ahead of time. Maybe the February live, we can come back and look at that. Tony says, I've been putting veneers on bendable plywood to make round tables and bow front doors, using Titebond to glue with heat to apply veneer to plywood. Yeah, cool technique. Robert says, I just finished a curly maple tabletop with several layers of general finish, water-based dye stain. Would Tung oil be the best final finish for a dining tabletop? You know, finishing questions always frighten me because I'm not a huge finishing guy. I know a lot of people use Tung oils on furniture. That's what's on my workbench here, linseed oil or Tung oil. For me, with tables, with high-use tabletops, I'm putting on a water-based lacquer that's specifically designed for tabletops. So I don't know. I would ask around to more finishing people that know finishes better. I jokingly say, but it's actually true, a big extent of my knowledge is I spray dewax shellac as a seal coat. I spray water-based lacquer as a top coat. It works great. That's a formula that works for me. Outside of that finishing box, I'm not that well versed. And there's so much that goes into a project, I don't want to lead you down the primrose path at the finishing step. So I would ask somebody that knows more than me, which is easy. Easy to find people that know more than me. And AJ's watching from Massachusetts. Hey AJ, say hi to Gracie. Kimmy says, how'd you add bottoms to the PVC containers behind you? It's 1/4 inch plywood just glued on the bottom. So I took, it's 4-inch pipe, and are you zooming? Okay. It's 4-inch pipe. I set the pipe on a piece of plywood and traced it, and then I cut it too big on, I don't know, bandsaw or handheld jigsaw, glued it on with CA glue, and then once the glue was dry, I used a flush trim router bit in a handheld router to trim it flush. So that, I was too cheap to buy the caps for all these 4-inch pipes, and that plywood worked great on it. Newfoundland, Canada, that's cool. Orlando, I bet it's warmer there than here. That's Steven. Considering making a cutting board from Ipe, any thoughts? Oh, it's crazy hard, so that's good. It's naturally water resistant, so that's good. I think it'd be a good choice. Close grained, you know, like oak is not close grained. Oak is kind of porous, not a good cutting board choice. So yeah, no, I think that would be good. I think when you glue it, you got to be careful about gluing it. You need to wipe it down with like naphtha before you glue it because it's an oily wood. You want to make sure the glue has a chance to stick. So I'd clean it with naphtha when you get to the gluing step before you put the glue on. Good evening, George. I think I've heard you talk about turning projects from green wood and then wrapping them in plastic. Could you explain in a little detail? I tried it with a piece of magnolia and it molded up on me. Perhaps I wrapped it too tight. Yeah, so no, sequence is the other way around. I wrap stuff in plastic. I cocoon it in plastic when it's a block, when it's like a log. So I find a log that I think would be a cool bowl. I bring it in the shop, and either with a bandsaw or electric chainsaw, I kind of cut it round. I get it sort of looking like a bowl blank. Then I wrap it in plastic and I set it aside until I get to it. Then, like this bowl, this was 26% moisture content the day I started turning it. So I turned it start to finish dripping wet green. Now if you look at it in this direction, you can see it's not round, it's elongated. And I think that's cool. So it, obviously coming off the lathe, it was perfectly round. But because it was so wet, it continued to dry, or it dried, after it came off the lathe, and that made it distort. It's got a couple cracks in it. There's some spots, come in, right there. There are some cracks, and I can actually see light through those. That doesn't bother me at all. I think that's character. So for me, in this way of turning green bowls, I have been doing it start to finish green for decades, for 20 years. And I've had one or two crack to the point where I don't want to give them as a gift. Jenny, could you grab that huge box elder bowl? I think is on the CNC, no, all the way to the back. It's on that next wave CNC. My friend Paul's approach is when it's green, he turns it, but then he leaves the wall thick, sets it aside, I think, I don't know, 6 months until it completely dries. Then he goes back and finishes it. This is another one. Thank you, ma'am. Box elder bowl, I did. Same thing, dripping wet green, a bunch of years ago. Yeah, usually I write the date on there, but I didn't. So, same concept, start to finish, green. Yeah, Bob, if you can hear, we've been live for almost half an hour. He says, are we live yet? So yeah, maybe need to refresh your screen. I'm jumping over to YouTube quick. How do you set the blade in a jointer after changing blades? That's one, unfortunately I can't even show that because I've got insert tooling in my jointer. So those are just carbide cutters that go in, come out, go in, come out. I don't know, I'd have to stew on how I can figure out how to show that on a live. Best way to line up 1/2 inch hinges on small wooden chests. Figure out where they go, square them up with a square. We've got an article on GOA.com about hand routing to let hinges in. Seth Keller wrote that article, it's very good, so that would help you. How would bamboo work for cutting boards? I've seen a lot of cutting boards made out of bamboo. It's crazy hard, so I think it would be a great, make a great cutting board. Tim likes their new SawStops. All right. Terry is in Hawaii, where I'm sure it's warmer than here. So what's Sam? Let me just click this. Crazy hard. Yeah. Because a couple people, 2 people have said, where is the live session? And it's, I just clicked on it on my screen, it's playing, and it's playing on YouTube as well. So I think we're okay. Thomas says, when is the next live class, like the tool, the cordless tool class? It's coming up. I actually just submitted all the content yesterday. So I'm not sure what the date is, but it should be coming up. So Kimmy, you got to just tell me how to say your name. And Cleston both responded about the Rockler jig. And Cleston says it's called a thin rip jig. So that's like what I was showing you on the table saw. And Cleston provides a part number there as well. You can look in the comments. Thanks, Cleston. That's cool information. And then Don's got a link for it, so you're covered. Any thoughts on CNC routers for starters? Yep, get 2 or 3 of them. So here's my advice. You got to get some guesstimate on what you're going to do, and then that's going to lead to bed size, because that's one of the first lines in the sand is how big a machine do you need. What your budget's going to be, because then that's going to control obviously how much you can spend on the machine. You want to look, some machines will take both 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch shank router bits. Some will only take 1/4 inch router bits. My preference would be 1/4 and 1/2. Some machines have spindles on them. Some machines have routers. Spindles are more expensive, but will last you longer. With some machines, to save money, you can start with a router today, but then you can upgrade to a spindle in the future. So that would be a good question to ask the manufacturer is, if I want to save that dough, if I want to start with a, whatever, a Bosch Colt or a Porter Cable 7518 in the router, in the CNC today, can I, in the future, take that off and put a spindle on? Because a spindle for long-term CNC work is definitely the way to go. And then from there, CNCs have become so much more popular these days. A number of retail stores have machines in the store. So I would go to a store, tire kick there, find a place where you can take a class. I do CNC classes here. I've got 5 CNC machines here, so it gives people the opportunity to work with them before they pull the trigger on them. So find that in your area. Hello from Australia, that's very cool. Suggested grade of sharpening wheel for grade or grit for wood lathe chisels. I do my sharpening on a low RPM grinder with 120 grit wheel. John says square, level, and plumb. Meeting on the square. Yep. Medina, Ohio. AJ suggests compressed air on a power rasp. That might do it. That might kick it out. So Stan says, on a CNC, how do you determine starting feeds and speeds for a given bit and wood species? So let me just jump online here and I'm going to confirm this. I use a feed and speed thing called, G-Wizard. So G, like George, G-Wizard. And you can use it free to start out with, and then it's a paid subscription-based thing, but if you're using a CNC a lot, so I just went ahead and paid for the subscription for it. And you literally put in what bit you're using, how many flutes the bit has. Are you in hardwood? Are you in plywood? Are you in brass? Are you in aluminum? And it'll give you all that information. So that's how I figure it out. Larry says, a veneering question. I recently attempted to make a chessboard using veneer. All went well, cutting and taping the squares. I sandwiched the veneer between MDF using cauls, had good clamping pressure. Alas, I got terrible bubbles under the maple squares. The mahogany didn't bubble. I squeegeed the glue but didn't roll before clamping. I used regular Titebond glue. So his question is, do I need to use a special glue and do you have to use a roller for veneering? I am not a huge veneer guy, especially not, in a scenario like you've got, the issue you've got here with the veneer bubbling. I've put veneer on MDF, I've put veneer on solid wood to produce a contrast, but I just haven't, I haven't done enough of it to be able to answer the question. Titebond does make what they call cold press veneer glue, and a call to Titebond would tell you what the advantages of that are over conventional yellow glue. But I'm just sorry I'm not enough of a veneer guy to be able to help you with that. Can you talk about squaring the table saw fence to the blade? Yep, we'll run back to the table saw and do that. Larry says, your video on making a chessboard saved me. I got a great final product. Cool, good. Robert says, I got a new planer for Christmas. Yay! I do not have a jointer for boards that are not flat. Which is a better way to go? Use a plane to flatten one side or use a planer sled? I have sent a lot of stuff through my planer with very gentle passes to get it flat. So what messes you up on a planer with boards that aren't flat is that when you get down pressure from the feed rollers, it pushes the board flat, planes it, but then it springs back up on the outfeed side. So what I've found is often, not all the time, I can, by using just very gentle down pressure on the planer, I'm giggling at Ginny, I can get a board flat. If I'm picking between the two, I'm not much of a hand plane guy. So if it's a hand plane or a sled, because you've got something that's so corkscrewed, gentle pressure is not going to do it, I would build a sled and do it that way. That would work better for me because I'm not much of a hand plane guy. Thomas, your question about the domino, I have never used those fasteners. I own a domino, but I've never used those fasteners, so I don't know. I can't help you there because I'm not familiar enough with it to be able to answer. Big Joe says, when your table saw blades get dull, do you have them sharpened or throw them away and buy new ones? I get them sharpened numerous times. So on the front end, when you're buying a blade, it's a good idea to throw money at table saw blades and miter blades and router bits. In other words, buy good ones. Because part of what comes out of that, you stay there, Jenny, I'm coming right back, see if I can find. Part of what we get on a good blade is lots of characteristics. A flat plate, good quality carbide, but also a lot of carbide. The bigger the carbide is, the more frequently we can sharpen the blade. So a good blade can be sharpened 6 or 8 times before it gets to a point where there's not enough carbide left to tolerate another sharpening. So definitely yes to sharpening, and then leading into that, make sure that you're getting a good blade so you get a lot of sharpenings out of it. We're not going to forget, we got to go to the table saw yet. We're about halfway through. A big thank you again to Titebond for sponsoring and keeping these events free for all of us. Well, it's not free for me because I have to pay Jenny. Camera operators. Good ones are hard to find. Jim says, just getting started with a bandsaw. Do you have preferences for bandsaw blades? Suggestions on choosing one for resawing and one for scroll work? Yeah, I use Timberwolf. Could you, Jenny, see a cardboard box right on top of all the Craig stuff? That's full of bandsaw blades that I just ordered. I just need one. Just grab one. It's better instead of me just talking if I show the show and tell part of the show. No S of Frisbee. Timberwolf bandsaw blade. I get these from PS Wood, which is pswood.com. So as far as recommendations on resawing and scroll work, what I would do is jump online, pswood.com, find their phone number, call them, tell them what saw you have and what you want to do, and they're going to say, we recommend this blade, this blade, this blade. They have helped me so much with getting, making sure I've got the right blade for what it is I'm trying to do. So give PS Wood a call, they'll help you out. Mike says, what earbud tips do you use for your IsoTunes, foam or rubber? Foam mediums, and the mediums are perfect for my ears. Do you know what you have in yours, Ginny? Foam or rubber? Ginny wears the IsoTunes as well. She wears
foam, but
I use the pros,
smallest.
she uses the extras.
The smallest foam.
She's using small foams in hers.
Or rubber. And rubber. It's rubber.
Oh, she is using the rubber ones. And you like them? Yeah.
Yeah, the foam ones are weird to me.
Okay. Ron says, I'm thinking about using a 4-person 90 by 80 tent for a spray booth. Any comments? It's interesting. It's not a bad idea. They sell. You're finishing, Ron. That process will be so intense. How can you not laugh at that? Come on.
That was so bad.
It's not bad. It's perfect. It's like the problem with Boy Scouts. They're always intense. So anyway, no. So there are companies that sell what you're describing here, shrouds, open one side, that are specifically for spraying inside to keep stuff from filtering out of the air. It's a good idea. Give her a try. KMY. Okay, there we go. Ken says, if installing a bow tie spline in a split in a slab, should I pull the split close somewhat first? No, because you can't fight Mother Nature. If the split is there and it's just relaxed and sitting there, put the bow tie in. If you try to pull it closed, push the bow tie in and then take the clamp off, bad things will happen. Something else is going to crack. Do you have a website that shows classes if we want to fly up to take a class? Yes, Vondriska, my last name. Did I point in the right spot? Yeah. VondriskaWoodworks.com is my website. I'm reworking my whole class offering thing as we speak. So give me a little break on the scheduling. It's not fleshed out. Can I cut aluminum? Can I cut aluminum on my SawStop table saw? Yes, you can. Use a non-ferrous metal cutting blade, and don't forget to disable your brake. if you leave the brake on and you touch the blade with aluminum, you're going to fire the brake. Custom says routers are good, it's easy for road, but if you're doing 3D work with the router, 30. Yep. So the little more advice there from Cleston about spindles versus routers on CNC machines. Good advice. David says for sharpening is a variable speed grinder the equal of a slow speed grinder. My low RPM grinder runs at 1725. So that's where you want to hit it. Are you going to be at the Woodworking Show in Charlotte, North Carolina at the end of March? Nope. End of tonight, I'll talk about my upcoming teaching schedule and where I'm going to be in the near future. So on YouTube, Dave asks, what's the best solution for, I think, gluing is what he means, 45-degree miters on a box without using splines? I've been using this quick and thick glue on anything that's end grain. So miter joints, screw pocket hole joints on face frames. It's a thicker viscosity glue, so it doesn't wick up into the end grain so much. And then I clamp it with, on a mitered box, I would clamp it with a band clamp. Pull all four sides in at one time. It's the way to go. Oak-e-doke. Bandsaw tires come in different compositions, rubber versus urethane. Here's the thing, and what's the best? I'm not sure what the kick with urethane is. I had a Delta bandsaw I bought in 1993-ish that had rubber tires on it. I used that saw for probably 15 years, and I'm a heavy bandsaw user. Ultimately, I replaced the tires only because I was replacing bandsaw tires for video content. There was nothing wrong with the rubber tires when I took them off. I'm not sure what the big bonus is out of urethane tires. I've never had a problem with rubber tires on a bandsaw failing on me. Barry says, I've got a 4-foot by 15-inch log of persimmon. Suggestions on projects, so I don't know. What do you want to make? My projects are not necessarily your projects. I would poke around on, a good thing to do is Etsy and just look and see what other people are doing, and then find something there that clicks for you and make it. How do you know a saw blade needs sharpening versus cleaning? Nope, I'll show you. I will walk around. So this, Jenny, is where you'll earn your dough, because this is a great tight shot. Right there, I'll hold my thumb still for you. Here's the way I test cutting tools. You should be able to take a router bit or a saw blade, and I think this one might actually be dull, and get a corner of the cutter. Can you pan? Thank you. Get a corner of the cutter and just scrape across your nail. And I'm not pushing down on the saw blade, and see how it's scratching it, but it's not scratching it much. I expect a sharp blade to actually peel up a curl off my thumbnail. When it won't do that, that tells me this blade is dull. So that's a good objective test. And like I said, you can do the same thing with a router bit. Yeah, this blade, because dull means the corners are rounded. So rounded corners won't raise a curl on your nail. So this blade's ready to go get sharpened. Austin says, I'm making a bar stool. Would it be a good idea to use different types of wood glued together for the seat? Yep. The key to that is to make sure that the woods play nice together. So like woods with similar working characteristics, walnut, maple, cherry, great combo. Walnut, pine, balsa wood, not a good combo because their characteristics are so different. So your best bet is to keep all the characteristics the same. Hussein says, hey, from the Tampa area, how to remedy bandsaw blades fishtailing. I set the blade gullet in the center of the wheel, but nothing seems to help. The blade is fairly new from Timberwolf. So fishtailing, it's fluttering. I think you don't have enough tension on it. You have a tension deficit. Try putting a little more tension on it. Stan says, feeding off the tent question, think of creating a spray booth of plastic inside my shop for year-round spraying. There's a window at one end and a bulkhead at the other. Should I put an explosion-proof fan at one end? Yes. I mean, any fan should be explosion-proof. Can I recirculate and filter the air while wearing a respirator? So when it's cold, so he's concerned about when it's cold, pulling cold air in, which is a genuine concern. Most finishes don't like to cure under 50 or 60 degrees. I'm not sure that in just like a shop-made, put a furnace filter on a fan thing, I don't think you're going to get the air cleaning that you want. The filters that really do a good job of that are charcoal filters, not particulate filters. So to do what you're trying to describe there, I would look into charcoal filters and try setting up with that instead. I'm going to jump back to YouTube, see if there's anything over there. On YouTube, George says, what's your opinion, experience of Titebond Extend? Does it provide sufficiently more open time compared to the Titebond original to use on complex glue-ups? So yeah, I've used Titebond Extend a bunch of times, specifically on complex projects that I'm trying to buy more assembly time on. So yeah, I like it. Oh, and we got to run back to the table saw and do that fence gizmo. Eric says, DAP used to make a 2-part waterproof glue called Resorcinal. Is there a health reason it isn't manufactured? Well, I don't know. I used Resorcinal. I built a boat in like the mid 80s, a 15-foot boat, and that was glued together with Resorcinal. I wasn't aware that it was no longer made. I haven't had a need to use it. Somebody, P did says, does a California Proposition 65 sticker on everything bother you? No, I don't even notice it. All right, Ginny, should we? Yeah, okay, we're going back there. Lindsay says, my jet bandsaw trends to the left. Is this a problem of the tension? No, it's just a drift thing. Pretty much all bandsaws have a drift angle, and it's the bandsaw, it's the blade. There's a lot of things that add up to make that happen. So it's not like a table saw where we put a blade on the table saw, we do all the alignment, and it's good to go. You have to do drift compensation pretty much every time you change a blade on a bandsaw. Can you do a presentation on compound angles such as 4 or 5 side projects? Well, compound angles I get, 4 or 5 sided projects. I don't really know what that means, but we can cut compound angles, table saw or miter saw. Michael says, can I edge a piece of 1/4 inch aluminum with an upcut spiral bit Yes. Carbide, spiral bit, yes. We've machined, Jenny and I have machined a lot of brass and aluminum on the CNC machine, and that was done, well, I've done it with a standard 1/4 inch upcut spiral. The better bit is what's called an O-flute. O-flute bits are specifically for cutting plastics and non-ferrous metals. Kmoi says, do I have a smoke detector in my shop? Yes. What kind of fire extinguishers do I have? Kitty, ABC, and a fire company comes and looks at them. I don't know, like once a quarter or something, they come and inspect them. Let's go do the fence thing on the table saw. And I think, again, Jenny, you're going to want to kind of look down there. So Jenny and I have discussed the casters on the stand are lousy, so I need to upgrade them, and it's not Jenny's rolling, and it's not an earthquake. It's just, I skimped a little too much when I bought those casters. I need to get better ones. So the question is, how do we make sure that the fence is parallel to the blade? So here's what you need to do. First thing you need to do is read the owner's manual for your saw. And there's going to be information in there that helps you learn how on your particular saw adjustments get made. So the first thing you do is you test, is the blade, yeah, we're currently unplugged, is the blade parallel to the miter gauge slot? And if you look on, gotta think a second, if you look on GOA.com and you search table saw setup, upper right hand corner, we've got videos on this stuff. So basically, the gist of it is we're going to put some kind of a measuring device in the miter gauge slot. A dial indicator is your best bet. Raise the blade as high as it'll go with the saw unplugged. And then I'm going to bring that dial indicator over and let it kiss the side of the saw blade. My finger is the dial indicator. It's going to kiss the side of the saw blade. Then the dial indicator moves to the back and you rotate the blade. So we want to make sure that this reading that we're taking is always on the same tooth, because maybe that blade's not perfectly flat. So if all I do is read and read, maybe what I'm checking is, do I have a blade that's not flat? We need to read that tooth and then maybe mark it with an X with a felt tip, roll it to the back, read it again. Now, on cabinet saws like this one, the way adjustments are typically made is that this top is held onto the base with 4 bolts. And those bolts go through flanges in the base into the bottom of the cast iron. And the holes in the flanges are too big for the bolts. As a result, when the bolts are loose, this whole top wiggles independently of the blade. So SawStop takes it a step further. It's one of the great things about SawStop is they really thought this stuff through. There's actually an adjustment bolt that lets you dial it in and kind of corkscrew the top back and forth. The bottom line is, on cabinet style saws, the blade and its mechanism are mounted in the cabinet. In the top, the cast iron moves independently. On contractor style saws, typically, the trunnion, the blade mechanism, is bolted to the bottom of the top, and same concept, when the bolts that hold the trunnion to the cast iron are loose, the holes in the trunnion are too big, and the whole trunnion can be wiggled. So, cabinet saws, we move the top relative to the blade. Contractor saws, for the most part, we move the blade relative to the top. So step 1 is we get the blade parallel to the miter gauge slot. Now this is like middle school algebra. If A is equal to B and B is equal to C, A is equal to C. So next thing I'm going to do then is bring my fence over, and I'm feeling here with my fingers is my left face on the fence, even with the edge of the miter gauge slot. Right there it is on my end. And then I run my fingers all the way back, still parallel, still parallel, still parallel, yes. So we're checking if the blade is parallel to the slot and the fence is parallel to the slot, then the fence is parallel to the blade. Now, if you've got a dial indicator, the other thing you can do, remember we used it here to read against the blade, we could turn it this way and use it to read against the fence and use that to make sure that they're parallel. So this to this, this to this, and then you'll have this to this, and you'll be good to go. All right, couple minutos left. Do you prefer paste wax or spray stuff to reduce friction on table saw blades and bits? Well, I never put paste wax on blades and bits, and I every once in a while I spray a lubricant on blades or bits, but not often. I use spray stuff on my table surfaces, pointing to my table saw. Table saw, joiner, planer, bottoms of routers, router bases, top of my dovetail jig, all of that stuff gets the aerosol spray. What advice do you have for cutting bevels or faces onto a panel? Designing panels has been something I haven't done yet, but interested in starting. Router bits, basically panel raising router bits, and there's a profile that'll put a bevel on for you. But there's a lot of it depends. What angle do you want? How long do you want it to be? The downside to router bits is the biggest bit you can get is 3.5 inches in diameter. So your cutting area is only like 1.25 inches, maybe. If that works for you, great. If not, you can cut bevels on a table saw. You can do it with a hand plane. So yeah, at the end of the day, it depends on what look you're really trying to get. Stan says every time he views, he learns something. That's nice to hear. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Do I use a sliding feature on my SawStop? Yep, all the time. It's primarily, we use it for cutting bigger panels. It'll cross cut, I think, 37 inches. Do I have any 3-phase electric tools? Nope. But you can do, so a friend of mine had a commercial cabinet shop. He had 3-phase tools, and you can set up what's called a slave motor. And I don't know how it works, but I know it works. But a slave motor will let you convert single phase to 3-phase. But I think there are limitations on like how many amps it'll kick out and that kind of stuff. But you need an electrician for that, not moi. How many pounds are the magnetic switches? I do not know, but I think if you Google mag switch, M-A-G, you'll find them online, and if they don't have it on their page, you can check their customer service, and they'll be able to tell you. All right, one last cruise. Best surface stain after turning walnut? I don't know, because I've never stained walnut. I just like its natural color. Yeah, so I'm not a good one for that. After turning walnut. Yeah, when I turn stuff, I typically just finish it clear. All right, we're going to wrap up because it's 8 bells. I said I'd talk about Where's Waldo? So let me think a second. January, let's see. Oh, I know. So next weekend, we're all going to San Diego. We're all, me, Jenny, her sister.
Everyone's invited.
Everyone's invited because we're going to watch Jenny's brother, my son, graduate from the Marine Corps boot camp in San Diego. So that's part of the reason we're going to San Diego. I'm also teaching out there on Saturday the 19th. The qualifier there is, it's through the San Diego Woodworking Club. I'm teaching drawer construction, 9 a.m. Saturday the 19th. Don't contact me about this if it's something you're interested in doing. I'm not sure if it is or is not open to members outside the club. But they're a very active woodworking club. They've got a website, San Diego Fine Woodworking Club, I believe is what it's called. But if you do San Diego Woodworkers, you're going to find it. So I'm there Saturday the 19th. A week later, Saturday the 26th and Sunday the 27th, I'm in Chicago at the 2 Rockler stores. So I am 2 in the afternoon at both Orland Park and Bolingbrook. The specific stores are on my Von Driscoll Woodwork site, or they're on the Rockler sites. So you can check there. I'm not sure which store I'm at which day, but at 2 in the afternoon I'm doing door making demos. One day in Bolingbrook, one day at Orland Park. Then in February, I'm at the Rockler stores in Minneapolis, St. Paul. I'm doing the Minnetonka store and the Maplewood store, and that comes after we do the February live, so I'll have more info there. I think I'm all day in each of those 2 stores, so that's a longer teaching gig. End of February, I'll be at Stand Houston Equipment in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I think this is year 15 or 16 for me teaching there. That is the last weekend in February, Friday and Saturday. I don't know the topics yet. March 19th, I'm in Indianapolis, Indiana. And again, this is through Central Indiana Woodworking Club. I don't know if they do or do not open that to members outside the club, people outside the club. But if you're in the Indianapolis area and you want to check it out, Central Indiana Woodworking Club, right around March 19th. I think I'm there for 3 days teaching. March, April, I don't know. That's all I can remember off the top of my head right now. So, shall we sign off, Jenny? All right. Hasta la vista. Thanks so much for watching. And we will see you in February, and we will have come back with a new Marine, which will be kind of cool. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.